Embrace failure. Fail forward. Failure is the first step to success. We hear it all the time. But let's be honest. It's a lie. Not because it's untrue, but because it's incomplete. It's like telling someone to go to war without describing the blood, the mud, and the deafening silence that comes after. No one prepares you for the real process of failing. The ugly part. The part where you feel totally alone, where you second-guess every decision you've ever made, where the voice in your head tells you you're a complete and utter imposter. I know, because I've lived it. And in this video, I'm not going to feed you more empty platitudes. I'm going to tell you the truth about my biggest failure and show you how that ugly, messy, painful process becomes the non-negotiable launch pad for your greatest achievements. Section 1. The goal and the setup. 5 years ago, I was sure I had it. The idea, the kind that keeps you up at night, not with anxiety, but with pure, raw excitement. My co-founder and I were going to revolutionize the world for small businesses. Our concept was an AI-powered logistics platform, a tool to give small e-commerce shops the same supply chain power as the giants. We called it Nexus. For 2 years, Nexus wasn't just a job. It was my entire identity. It was 18-hour days fueled by cheap coffee and the absolute certainty that we were building the future. We poured our life savings into it. We convinced friends and family to invest their hard-earned money. We were charismatic, passionate, and persuasive. We painted this picture of a world where the little guy could finally compete, and we sold that picture to everyone, especially ourselves. The ambition was intoxicating. I remember standing in front of our first whiteboard, just covered in diagrams and arrows, feeling like we were on the edge of greatness. Every small win felt like a sign from the universe. Landing our first seed investment wasn't just a check. It was proof that our vision was validated. We hired a small, brilliant team who believed in the mission as much as we did. They took pay cuts, worked insane hours, and trusted us completely. The stakes weren't just financial. They were deeply personal. My relationships were strained. I missed birthdays, weddings, countless dinners. My entire sense of self-worth got completely tangled up with the success of Nexus. I wasn't a person anymore. I was the founder of Nexus, and Nexus was going to change the world. The pressure was massive, but I welcomed it. I saw it as the weight you have to carry before you can take flight. I was so focused on the destination, the big exit, the industry awards, the "I told you so," that I never once thought about what would happen if the engine just stalled and we fell out of the sky. This wasn't just a project. For any students watching, this was my dissertation, final exam, and graduation all rolled into one. For the entrepreneurs, you know this feeling. It was my everything. For the creatives, this was my masterpiece. For every professional out there, this was the career move that was supposed to define me. It was everything I could be, and I had staked my whole identity on it. And that's why, when it failed, it didn't just feel like a business loss. It felt like I had died. Section 2. The failure and the ugly process. The end wasn't some big cinematic explosion. It was a slow, agonizing bleed out. A death by 1,000 paper cuts. It started when a key investor got cold feet, blaming market volatility. Their exit started a domino effect. The rest of our funding round, which had felt like a sure thing, just evaporated. Suddenly, our runway wasn't a year. It was barely a month. The pressure was suffocating. Small disagreements between my co-founder and me blew up into bitter fights. The bond that fueled our late nights was replaced by blame and resentment. He saw the writing on the wall before I did, and after one last brutal argument, he walked. He was out. Just like that, half the company's brain and all of its remaining spirit were gone. I tried to hold it all together. I told the team it was just a pivot, a temporary setback. But they saw it in my eyes. They saw the hollowed-out look of a captain who knows he's going down with the ship. Our product launch, rushed and under-resourced, was a disaster. The platform was buggy, the user interface was clunky, and our target market, The small businesses we were supposed to be helping found it too complicated. We became a textbook case for why so many businesses fail. Studies by firms like CB Insights consistently show the number one reason is no market need, and we were a perfect example. We had built something we thought they needed without ever truly understanding what they actually wanted. The market was indifferent, and there is nothing more soul-crushing than indifference. The day I had to tell my team that we were out of money, that Nexus was over, is burned into my memory. I saw the looks of betrayal, disappointment, and fear. These people had trusted me. They had families, and I had failed them. But that was just a public failure. The ugly process happened in the silence that followed. It started with shame. I'd walk into a coffee shop and feel like every eye was on me, whispering, "There's the guy who blew it all." I dreaded the question. "So, how's the business going?" It felt like a punch to the gut. I started lying, giving vague answers, or quickly changing the subject. Eventually, I just stopped going out. The isolation was a fortress I built brick by brick. Then came the voice in my head, and it was vicious. "You are so stupid. How could you ever think you could pull this off? You let everyone down. Your team, your family, yourself. You're not an entrepreneur. You're a fraud. And now everyone knows." This isn't just being hard on yourself. Neuroscience research has shown that the brain processes social rejection and failure by activating many of the same neural circuits that register physical pain. That ache in my chest, that knot in my stomach, it wasn't just in my head. It was a real physical response. My brain was screaming at me that I had endangered my own survival. I spent weeks doing nothing. I'd just stare at a wall for hours, replaying every mistake. Sleep was no escape. I'd wake up with a jolt of anxiety at 3 a.m., my heart pounding with the fresh memory of my own humiliation. My sense of self had been so tied to my ambition that without it, I felt like nothing. I wasn't at square one. I was in a crater hundreds of feet below it, with no ladder and no light. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. This is the part they leave out of the motivational posters. They don't tell you about the profound loss of your own identity. They don't tell you about the shame that makes you feel radioactive. They don't tell you that failure isn't just an event. It's a lingering state of being. It's a thick fog that seeps into every corner of your life. The turning point wasn't some grand epiphany. It was much quieter. It was one afternoon, sitting in my silent apartment, when I realized the pain wasn't going to kill me. I had hit rock bottom, and I was still, somehow, breathing. The endless loop of self-blame was exhausting, and for the first time, a different thought broke through. What if I stopped running from this? It was a terrifying idea. To actually sit with the failure, to look it right in the eye. I didn't want to. I wanted to numb it, distract myself, pretend it never happened. But a tiny flicker of curiosity sparked. I decided right then to do the one thing I feared most, to perform an autopsy on my dead company, to be brutally honest about why we failed. That small decision, born not from courage but from sheer exhaustion, was the first real step out of the dark. Section 3. The Launchpad and the Lesson. I opened my laptop and created a new document. I called it Nexus, the Autopsy. Forcing myself to write it felt like reliving a trauma, but this time, I wasn't the victim. I was the medical examiner. I made one rule: no emotional language. No, I felt, or I regret. Just facts. Data. What were our core assumptions? Assumption number 1. Small businesses were desperate for an all-in-one AI solution. The autopsy revealed the truth. They were desperate for simple, cheap tools that solved one problem well. Our platform tried to be a Swiss Army knife and ended up being a dull one. Assumption number 2. A great product markets itself. The autopsy proved how naive that was. We had no real marketing strategy, no content, no community. We were just shouting into the wind. Assumption number 3. I was a leader. The autopsy was brutal on this point. I wasn't a leader. I was a passionate evangelist. I inspired people, but I didn't manage them. I set an impossible pace, ignored the signs of burnout, and failed to create an environment where my team felt safe enough to tell me the hard truths I didn't want to hear. Page after page, I documented everything. With every word I typed, a strange thing started to happen. The emotional weight began to lift. The shame, which had felt like this huge monster, started shrinking under the bright light of objective analysis. It wasn't a monster, it was just data. My failure wasn't a verdict on my character. It was the most expensive, but also the most valuable data set I had ever acquired. This is the first and most critical lesson. You have to separate the event from your identity. The strategy was flawed, not you. The business failed, not you. It's not about just being resilient and bouncing back. This process isn't about going back. It's about bouncing forward, using the force of the impact to launch you to a higher place. I started to see the ugly process differently. The shame that isolated me, that was the fire that burned away my ego and my crippling fear of what other people think. The painful self-reflection, that was what carved out a new level of self-awareness I never could have reached through success alone. Research and personal stories show that the ability to handle pressure and setbacks is a key factor in long-term success, and that resilience is often forged in the furnace of failure. That ugly process wasn't a detour. It was the training ground. It felt like my brain, through neuroplasticity, wasn't just healing. It was rewiring itself, creating new pathways to handle adversity. So how do you turn your own ugly process into a launch pad? Here's a simple framework. First, conduct a brutally honest autopsy. When you fail, your first instinct is to either blame everyone else or blame yourself entirely. Both are useless. You need to become a cold, dispassionate scientist. Write down every assumption, every decision, and the result. What did you get right? What did you get wrong? What was in your control and what wasn't? Don't judge it. Just document it. This turns emotional pain into actionable insight. Second, reframe failure as data collection. This is the core of what psychologist Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset. A failure isn't an F on your report card. It's a lab result. We hear stories about the average entrepreneur failing in business multiple times before building a successful one. Are they just lucky on the final try? No, they're iterating. Each failure provides data that informs the next attempt. You didn't fail. You just ran an expensive experiment that proved a hypothesis wrong. Now you have the data to design a better one. Third, build your failure council. When you're in that ugly place, you instinctively hide. You need to do the opposite, but strategically. Find a small group of people, not just cheerleaders, but honest advisors who can look at your autopsy with you. As Andrew Lindley noted in his TEDx talk, you need a support network that will actually pick you up when you fall. These are the people who can say, yes, that was a mistake, and here's what you can learn from it. This council is your ground crew. They help you analyze the flight data from the crash so you can build a better plane. The platitudes are right in one sense. Failure is essential, but they're dangerously wrong in their simplicity. They sell you a destination without ever giving you a map for the treacherous journey. The journey through the ugly process, the shame, the isolation, the self-doubt, is not something to be avoided or rushed. It is the journey. It's the mechanism of transformation. The goal isn't to fail. The goal is to chase something so meaningful that failure is a real and accepted risk. The goal is to have the courage to try and the wisdom to understand that when you do fail, it's not the end of your story. It is the moment you finally get the tools and the training you need for the next bigger chapter. So, I'm going to challenge you. Think about your biggest failure, the one that still stings. The class you bombed, the job you lost, the project that collapsed. Stop seeing it as a scar you need to hide. Stop seeing it as an ending. Instead, ask yourself one question. What is this failure trying to teach me? Get out a piece of paper and conduct your own autopsy. Find one lesson. Just one piece of data you can carry forward. Because that piece of data is the first part of your launch pad. The truth is, you don't just rise despite your failures. If you learn from them, you rise because of them. That pain is the fuel. That struggle is the strength. And that ugly, messy, horrible process, and always will be, the beginning of you.